Do you ever have those moments where someone asks you to do something or tells you to do something, and they think you're amazing, and you look at them and you're thinking, you've got the wrong person here. It's just me. I think you're thinking about someone else. There's got to be someone better than me that you're thinking about. Most of us have got at least some people who speak positively into our lives and think big of us. Some of us are lucky enough to have champions, people who will consistently see more in us than we see in ourselves. I've got a handful of these people. I don't mean the ones that are just flattering, or just saying nice things. I mean the people who've been there with you through thick and thin. They've seen you at your worst as well as your best. And they will still see more in you than you do in yourself. But even those people, none of them know the real you, right? The you that you hide from everyone. If they could see that person, even they would know, right, that they're wrong. At least in part. There's this guy called Gideon, and he's he's not the best. He's the story takes place 1,000 years before Jesus is with us. So we're talking about a guy from 3,000 years ago, and in Gideon's country has been invaded by a foreign army. Like that kind of thing isn't still always in the news. These invaders basically want to wipe out all hope of Gideon's people have. So they're stopping their supply of food. They take out all their sheep and goats and cattle and donkeys. And if they see fields being harvested, especially if they see this telltale dust cloud of grain being threshed on the floor, they sweep in and they steal and kill and destroy. So when we meet Gideon, he's threshing his grain. He's doing it in a winepress, a dug-out hole in the ground, so that he can do it in secret. Suddenly, the Bible tells us that an angel appears. And Gideon doesn't recognize this guy who's an angel, not straight away. The angel speaks to him and says, "Mighty hero, God is with you." Now, to Gideon, this is like a double joke or a double insult. Mighty hero, he's definitely not him. Here he is hiding in a hole in secret, getting food for his family and hoping not to be caught. And as far as the phrase "God is with you" is concerned, in his culture, this phrase carries a load of baggage with it. There should be signs of prosperity or success or maybe help or hope or health or protection or power. None of these things are happening. So Gideon, he feels like God's abandoned him, and not just him, all of his people. So this is how Gideon replies to this guy. He says, "If God's with us, where are all the miracles from the past? This God who got Moses to free 1 million slaves from Egypt, where is he now? Where is he now?" Good question. Have you ever felt like that? The angel stays on track. He says, "Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel. I am sending you." So Gideon feels like he's got to put him right again. He says, "How can I rescue Israel?" He says, "Standing in this hole surrounded by grain dust. My clan is the weakest in our whole tribe, and out of everyone in our clan, I'm the least like a warrior out of everyone in my family." Have you ever felt like that? But the angel carries on. He says to him the same thing that he said to Moses centuries before, because you see, this angel is no ordinary angel. He's called the angel of the Lord, and Many people believe that the angel of the Lord is an appearance of Jesus himself, but way before he becomes human, because Jesus is not constrained by time. So he says this to Gideon. He says, I will be with you. I'll be with you. So jump forward about 1,000 years to a new story. This is where Jesus has been born and he's walking about amongst us on earth. So Jesus takes 3 of his followers, Peter, James and John, and they go up a hill to pray. Nothing unusual about that. Jesus bobs off on his own all the time to go and take time to pray. But this time, suddenly his face becomes like this ball of light, and his clothes they're like lightning, like whiter than you could ever bleach anything, as if his divinity and his eternity is suddenly on display for all the world to see. Except it's not all the world, is it? It's just Peter, James and John. And then, as if that's not enough, 2 figures from history appear. Moses, who gave the Hebrews the 10 Commandments and parted the Red Sea and removed them from slavery, and Elijah, who performed loads of miracles and had a school of prophets and left earth by riding on a chariot of fire that went up to heaven instead of dying. What? So Peter and James and John are like, let's build you shelters so we can all stay here forever. Because they literally don't know what to say or do. And they feel like Gideon, don't they? They're like, how come we're here? Look at these guys, who are we? I mean, 3 ex-fishermen standing on a mountain witnessing this divine cosmic event that defies time. It's just months later that this same nature-defying, history-defying God with us, Jesus, allows himself to be arrested while the disciples are all with him in this public garden. And they all desert him. Peter tries not to, but there's this crunch moment where Peter can see Jesus being beaten in another space, and the servants all around him by the fire say to his face, "Are you with him?" 3 times he says he's never even met the guy. Have you ever felt like that? The story of Easter is a story of good news. I mean, in fact, the story of Easter is consistently better news than people often think it is, including most of us who call ourselves Christians, because at its heart, it's a story of a God who knows us inside out, who wants to tell us and show us in the strongest possible terms, mighty hero, I am with you. So go in the strength that I will give you and be co-rescuers of both people and culture with me. Yeah. On Easter Friday, hanging almost naked, whipped, bruised, laughed at, taunted, beaten, bleeding, the world saw Jesus on a cross. Those who were there saw a preacher who'd been tamed or a fraudster who'd been unmasked. For some of them, they interpreted what was happening as a liar who had been doing the devil's work, finally getting his just reward. But not everyone saw just that. There were some standing there, including a Roman centurion, who saw the divine being choosing to make himself a sacrifice for our sins. All the times that we've trespassed into areas we should not have gone into, you know. What most of them didn't see was that at that moment, all of the wrong attitudes we carry about God and ourselves and others, which then go on to become wrong actions against God and ourselves and others, all of those moments were being drawn into Jesus and hung on that cross with him. Jesus was willingly taking it all, and as he did, the earth shook around him, rocks split open, the midday skies grew dark, nearby tombs broke open, and holy men who laid their dead returned to life. And in the Temple of Jerusalem, a huge curtain that separated people from God's holiness suddenly ripped in two from the top to the bottom. And the unseen gates of hell were torn from their hinges. 3 days later, that bruised battered, lifeless body walked out of a borrowed tomb, that transformed figure from the top of the hill could not be defeated by sin or death, and his lightning-filled second humanity sprang back to life. Only a few years later, one of Jesus' greatest opponents, called Paul, would write this: "Now God is spirit, and where the Spirit of God is, there is true freedom. And we are being transformed into his likeness with ever-intensifying glory that comes from God himself, the Spirit." Yeah. To everyone who believes, to all who accept this divine transaction as a possibility for themselves, God's Spirit longs to come and take up his home inside our very souls. Those people have a promise from God of transformation. That same transformation that Peter and James and John saw with their eyes on the top of that hill, it takes place inside our souls and our spirits as well. New creations, rebirth, transformation. This Easter, maybe for you, it's time. Time to stop looking at ourselves based on what we can see with our human eyes. You know, we see decay and failure. God sees hope and peace. We see the weakness of humanity. God sees the strength of his presence. We see limitations. God sees possibilities. We view our history littered with mistakes and regrets and transgressions, lost chances, bad decisions. God sees restoration and light and gold. We see sin, he sees forgiveness. We see brokenness, he sees wholeness. We see death, he sees resurrection. We see mortality, he sees metamorphosis. Because God is spirit, and where the Spirit of God is, there is true freedom, and we are being transformed into his likeness with ever-intensifying glory, which comes from God himself, who is the Spirit. So you, mighty hero, may you know that God is with you, and may you go in the renewed strength that he will give to you, and join his movement of co-rescuers of people and of culture with me, knowing that it's the resurrected Phoenix-like Spirit of God who lives in you and is sending you. And know this, deep inside you, he'll never leave you or abandon you. He is with you and will continue to be with you until the very end of time itself.